And all right, Javier. Well, WWE is promoting a lot right now. Saturday's Main Event, Evolution, SummerSlam. This has happened before. At times when WWE is promoting a lot of events, it's it's kind of to try to exhaust people the weekend of AEW's biggest show of the year. So we sort of have that as a predatory, sidebar, aggressive, anti-competitive or ultra-competitive maybe backdrop to it. But their job is to succeed with all of them and not have people feel overwhelmed. I think one thing they did well is address that between now and SummerSlam, there could be title changes, especially on the women's side with Jade Cargill saying she'll face whoever is a women's champion, whether it's Tiffany or Trish Stratus, because Tiffany revealed on tonight's show, tape Monday night, by the way, after Raw. So a lot of this has been talked about all week. That Trish Stratus was the challenger for Tiffany. So, kind of part one is, do you like that aspect of it? That they are saying, yeah, we got a lot going on, but we're going to focus on Evolution and have it tie into SummerSlam in a way where it can affect top matches there.
Yeah, at least it gives a reason why, it gives a purpose, or at least a semblance of a purpose to these pay-per-views. Because they do feel kind of hastily put together. Granted, a part of that is because Liv got injured and she was likely going to be a major part of their plans. So a lot of shuffling going on. So I mean, it's better than nothing, but it's not like, I don't feel like the stuff they're planning is must see. And even like, with Stratton pretty much saying, oh, you're going to face me at SummerSlam. Granted, I understand it's because she is saying that I'm going to be winning, but yeah, it kind of just feels like they're saying, hey, yeah, maybe it might be Trish versus Jade at SummerSlam, but don't get your hopes up.
Well, and I don't feel like I need to be convinced that that's going to happen. I mean, if we just sort of pretend for a moment that everything is real, we wouldn't know. So in that sense, within the narrative structure of WWE and SmackDown, their TV shows, they should consider all options. I don't think we have to come away convinced that there's any chance that Trish wins to think it's a good decision to at least discuss it in the narrative. And I think that was good. The downside is the execution of the narrative involved Tiffany Stratton, who's hard to listen to with her inflections as a babyface. Trish Stratus, who's always had a weird, kind of vocal pattern. Promos were not her strength. And Jade Cargill was probably the strength of the segment, and she's pretty stilted in her delivery at this point, very kind of caricaturized. But I don't know. So it was to me, good idea, right thing to do. A little tough to listen to. It felt pretty scripted and kind of choppy. What did you think?
Yeah, pretty much everything you said. My thought coming away out of the whole thing is like they really need to get some line reading coaches or something, because it's been an albatross around Stratton's neck for a while now, and and Trish is Trish, and Jade's also. I mean, Jade is the strongest, but she's very like wrestlery, if you know what I mean. It's very, I'm cutting a wrestling promo, and this is what a wrestling promo should sound like, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's not the best mix of women, at the moment. And I want to throw Naomi in there because, like, as much as I love the cartoonish, her cartoonish, or scream, or whatever the hell she did, it was like straight out of a cartoon. I thought it was hilarious. Don't think what they were going for, but hey, yeah.
Yes, so that is absolutely part of the issue too. Or in addition to everything I said about the segment itself, is Naomi's kind of cackling, cartoonish villain laugh. I mean, to me, I would have done a second take and said, dial it down. It's not that it's inconsistent with what Naomi's character is, which is over the top, gleefully villainous, but I think it just wasn't a good take. Like it felt like it just crossed the line from she is gleefully a villain to she's doing a parody of a movie villain or cartoon villain, and you want to dial it down or just shift it in tone a little bit for it to resonate better. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't out of character for her. It just felt too caricaturish.
It felt like if you ever see the cutscenes in like a movie and the villain's going like really over the top hammy just for the fun of it in the scene that gets cut. That's kind of what it felt like, which is to say I found it entertaining, but again, it not serving the purposes they want to serve.
Yeah. So a few comments in the chat on this. Andy, the Mario and Sonic fan 2000 says Naomi is turning into a Power Rangers villain.
Yeah.
Mark Biscetti says, yep, Power Rangers villain is perfect. Javier, it looks like you agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments on that's on the women's segment. Tiffany's cadence and overall presence is better suited for a heel. Scott TPA in general just said, yeah, that was a very tough segment to watch. And let's see, I think I had another comment in here on it. Jade getting taken out by an over-the-top villain, Naomi, wasn't any better. Evolution is barely enough. Afterthought that Tiffany segment was rough, said Mark Biscetti. So, Standard Deviation ready to dump Tiffany goes, the sooner Tiffany gets replaced by Blake, the better, in my opinion. So let's talk about Tiffany for a second. Is this a problem? Her delivery does not work. It's a cadence that I am trying to imitate a little bit that's sounding more like Charlotte in the robotic sense. But then there's this sort of, I don't even know how to describe the inflection of her voice, but it's not, there are men and women who I just want to make sure we're not sitting here like microanalyzing her more than we do other wrestlers, male and female. And I don't think we are. I mean, I do think she's new. She was a heel. She hasn't changed her enough of her presentation for being a heel. And I just don't think it sounds natural enough or likable or pleasant as you would want her to come across if you're trying to turn her into the type of star that I think they expect her to be able to become.
Yeah, I think that she needed to have a heel run. I don't consider what she had was a heel run because she was a secondary heel to Jax with the idea of you're going to get sympathy because Jax is mistreating her. But she didn't do anything to like earn that sympathy. So why did I care that she cashed in on Nia Jax? Yep. And her speech cadence, it comes across as fake. You could do that if you're a heel. That's another, point in why she should still be a heel. You do that if it's a heel because you're not really trying to entertain the audience. Fakeness is a heelish trait. There've been some times where she's come across like authentic, like on occasion, I'm like, well, there's something there. But when she falls back into the whole Trishy time thing and the whole, let's go ahead and call it the Barbie-esque persona, that kind of thing, it would work had she had like a lengthy heel run with that, and then people like would fall in love with the character, and then like you adjusted a couple of things. But it felt like they said, "Oh, we already did that work on NXT, and so we don't have to do it here." People are gonna carry what they liked about her in NXT over to here, and it's different audiences. So
yeah. Another chat, Brock Benningfield said Tiffany's cadence and overall presence is better suited for a heel. And Derek Mitchell says, I agree with Brock. Tiffany is mistyped or miscast as a babyface, and honestly, not very likable as a babyface. And the thing is it's not just the cadence and the inflection of her tone. It is the overall demeanor. And frankly, and this is more, I don't know if meta is not the right word, but it's just the whole reliance on the catchphrase. What time is it? It's Tiffy time. Even that is just off-putting. But that's a WWE thing. That's not really on her. And she doesn't have the agency at this point in her career to go, I don't want to be one of those people who just has a catchphrase and leans on it too much. But, it's the we want the smoke kind of thing where it's just, what's that? Or is that yeah. Yes. I wasn't sure if you just were coughing or you were trying to send a signal under your breath. Okay. So, yep. And so Kyle Fassel adds, I think they have a similar issue with her that they do with Seth Rollins. People like singing his song, but he's a heel. Tiffany was a heel, but everyone likes saying Tiffy time. Now, Derek Hubbard says, I tend to agree with you, but the live crowd does not seem turned off by her cadence and verbiage. If anything, I do think her presentation has been limiting her momentum. So what is the actual effect that we're noticing here? the fact that we're sitting here in the chat going, it's not really a babyface promo. It needs some work. I've said I think WWE should send wrestlers to acting class. Like, just that should be built in. There should be acting classes. There should be acting coaches working intensely with people who are getting big pushes at TVs or separately. And people who are new to TV, it's tough. Not everyone's going to be natural and polished, and I don't think she's one of them. But do you think it's affecting the crowd, or is she just sort of a cartoon Barbie babyface in a way where maybe fans will be more forgiving of that than they might be with someone else, because the expectations are kind of low for her character, and it's sort of, she's graded on a curve with fans as long as she's opposite some heels. Not that that's happening right now, because she's opposite of Trish and Jade.
I mean, my biggest issue with her is I don't know what she stands for.
Mm-hmm.
What are her virtues? What that I should be attracted to? Because the stuff I see from her personality is more like, pridefulness and over pridefulness, and that's not something that you necessarily, particularly when you're over prideful, that's a turnoff. So what does she offer me to make me want to see her win? She hasn't really done courageous. They did a little bit of that when she went up against Nia Jax in the street fight, but it's just like one step that they did where she'll take a fight. She's not, but if that's the way you're going to go to build her that way, why do we like Cody? Because Cody doesn't run from fights, and he sticks up against bullies. We haven't seen any of that kind of, anything from her in that respect. So she's kind of just like just a hole, in space, just like just there. And I don't have anything to really want to either boo or cheer her. She's just like a nothingness there. And I'm not blaming her specifically. It's just that they haven't done anything with her character as to why I want to, I care. They give me nothing to care about or dislike.
I think that's a good point, because maybe this wouldn't be as much of a problem, although we might mention it in more than passing in terms of her delivery and acting, if her character had some layers, had developed, like you say, a reason for us to root for her and to understand what she stands for. And she just happens to be somebody who fits a certain category that has often been featured over the decades in WWE's women's division, and she's getting a big push. And she's a tremendous athlete and looks like a star, but her promo set her back, and maybe that would be less of an issue if we knew a little bit more about her, other than she's from Prior Lake, Minnesota, and that's about it. And she's had early success. Kavanti Smalls says, Tiffany's promos overall have been weak. She still comes across as scripted, and if something goes awry, she malfunctions. Derek Mitchell said, I think if we can critique Jade on a regular basis about her lack of wrestling ability, Tiffany is not above reproach being criticized. Of course not. Nobody is. They're all on TV. They're all making a lot of money, and they want us to spend money on them or spend time on them. And they are public figures, and it is absolutely fair game to evaluate. And trust me, it's going on behind the scenes too. I mean, there's a reason that certain wrestlers get pushed and others don't. And there's a reason that there's, coaching and critiques and all that going on. WWE's aware, of things that they want tweaked too. One of the advantages we have from the seats we sit in is we don't have a stake in the decision-making that put wrestlers in a position to succeed or fail. So we don't sort of like the GM on a team who drafted a player who's not doing well, but puts pressure on the coach to play them because they want to, be vindicated. But if a new GM comes in and didn't draft that player gets evaluated just on what they're contributing to the team and the games, not with the baggage of having been picked. So in defense, we're the consumers, we're the target audience, and our opinions collectively count, but it's ultimately up to WWE. Paul Levesque is where the buck stops, whether this is working. And he also has a power to tweak things. Now, talking about tweaking, Mark Paschetti says a bigger problem was in that particular segment. All the women sounded like they were reciting lines rather than actually having a heated debate with each other in the ring. And that adds to it. I mean, like I said, Trish's weakness has always been her delivery. Jade is green on the microphone, and Tiffany is awkward and stilted. So, putting those three out there, if you're Paul Levesque, is kind of asking for trouble. And I don't know if extra time was given to them to try to get it right, or if they're just sort of like, we'll let them work it out on air. Javier, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying it was a train wreck by any means.
Right.
It just was just not. It was just not there. You could have put, and I don't want to compare her to like Rhea Ripley. When Rhea Ripley's speaking, you're hanging on her every word.
Yep.
Stratton, she goes, it's whatever her time thing, and that's it. I don't really get that the fans are hanging out. What she's going to say next? What's she going to say next? It's because it's kind of it really feels like 5 years ago scripting, or 10 years ago scripting at this point, and not I mean, again, not horrible. It gets the job done, gets the point across what you're trying to do, but it's also not engaging. That's
fair. Mark Boschetti says her voice is grating on the nerves. I don't mean to be mean. It's genuinely how I felt listening to and watching her. And I think that's an issue that deserves attention by WWE. Now, what about Trish Stratus returning, Javier? Do you like her getting a title shot? Derek Mitchell does not. WWE is producing a lot of content, but I'm not a fan of Trish being grandfathered in for a title shot at Evolution. This is right in line with Goldberg getting grandfathered in for a shot against Gunther. In this case, with Goldberg, it felt like the WWE was giving him a title shot. In this case, I think I give them credit for kind of going around it, which is you get to pick your opponent because it's a women's only show. The women's champions are given the chance to pick the opponent that they want to have. And if they're both baby faces, they're making they can be trusted to make a choice that will be a tough challenger and not a cakewalk or a soup can or whatever, use an old boxing term. So I'm more okay with this in that respect, unless you think, well, Tiffany's trying to sneak by with a weak defense because Trish is long retired and part-time. So yeah, how do you feel about that, Javier?
Yeah, I don't mind it as much for those reasons. It's, she got to choose, she's a legend, and yeah, it was fine. Even the Gunther case, they had already done some legwork in terms of the stuff with the family that I know it felt like ages ago. So I didn't mind it as much as like just saying, it's a gift. When in reality, it's just a way to juice up the match a little bit. It's just that just throwing it in there kind of makes me think like, oh well, like it kind of obvious she's not going to win, unless they want to do some shenanigans with the briefcase. But outside of that,
yeah. All right. Mark Boschetti says, for Jade, 5 years of getting this much special attention and still being this green, that's a huge investment that isn't likely to pay off at this point. But I would love to be wrong. Jason D from Australia chimes in. Some wrestlers overdo the whole say one sentence and make sure you use an unnatural inflection, pause, wait for reaction, start again. It helps that Rhea has a strong voice that isn't whiny. And that is where it comes down to, just kind of projecting your voice in a way that isn't grating and feels, especially when you're doing scripted material with kind of little one-liners, working on that. So it doesn't sound as manufactured. Jason adds, I understand why Tiffany would choose Trish at Evolution. She wants to prove she is a true evolution of Trish, and they did team together a few months ago. There's definitely storyline support here, and I thought it was good that Trish said, thank you, Tiffany, for giving me a chance to wrestle in front of my family. But now what I realized, my kids haven't seen me wrestle as champion, and it was a good tie-in. I mean, there's definitely history there, and it's not like some random legend from the past. And then, Tiffany is kind of the modern version of who Trish was early on. So overall, I think this is storyline-wise and drawing card-wise, and given the context of an all-women's Evolution show, I think Trish is a good opponent for Tiffany in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably list off the top of my head a couple more that I would prefer Trish to wrestle. But yeah, it's fine because Tiffany's currently the champion.
Who intrigues you to wrestle Trish if she wasn't in a title match against Tiffany?
I'd like to see her against like a Rhea Ripley, Stephanie Vakir, Julia. I'd like to see her more mix it up with somebody who's just recently arrived. Even a Perez. Who else am I forgetting? Somebody who was a recent call-up, or even like help someone over in the NXT roster, like a Jordan Grace, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to, build in a storyline. Yeah. To explain it, but
my understanding is that the Trish thing came together like last minute, so I understand everything. It's fun. I mean, it's just not like I'm if I had to pay for it, I wouldn't. It's not going to make me part with my money anymore than otherwise.
Yep. All right, let's pause and introduce ourselves in the show, and then I want to talk about the Charlotte Alexa Bliss development too, and certainly other things on this show. We have a name for the latest member of Solo Sakoa's family tree. This is a Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Friday, July 4th, 2025. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, editor, publisher, and founder of the PWTorch brand of pro wrestling journalism, starting with a paper copy newsletter and evolving, since that's the theme here, evolving into a website back in 1999. In between or along the way, I did a radio show on 50,000 watt KFAN All Sports Radio, I think the second all sports radio station in the country, for years in the early 90s, and interviewed some big pro wrestling names and did a live call-in format, reviewing wrestling kind of like we are here tone-wise. By the way, those shows are available with the VIP membership if you want to hear me talking in the early 90s about what was going on in professional wrestling in all sports radio studio on weekends. And also, we did a 900 line for a while when that was the only way to deliver instant news to fans, as the internet had not yet taken off. But of course, we were a pioneer in the podcasting realm. We were doing podcasts on a regular basis before the word podcast was a word, based on the old iPad, or iPod, I should say, long before the iPad. And we call them audio shows, and sometimes we still fall back on that. Our audio show archive, our podcast archive, goes back over 20 years, and that also comes with a VIP membership. So if you're not a VIP membership and you want to learn about wrestling history, one of the things we're doing right now in the PWTorch VIP podcast feed is in the VIP Vault section. We are it just happens in the timeline. We've been doing this for years. On the 18th anniversary of shows, we republished them on our RSS podcast feed for the first time, because there wasn't an RSS feed back when we originally did the shows. They were just downloadable from our website, and we're to the Chris Benoit family tragedy portion of things, and we've just had one show after another. Bruce Mitchell Audio Show has been thoroughly covering this. Wade Keller Hotlines, the other team, Jason Paul joined Pat McNeil to talk about it. Those are available right now if you want to see, kind of experience our coverage in real time from the night of the incident on, our critique of media coverage, shameless, shameful, and just wacky takes on things, along with us kind of figuring out or doing our best to figure out what happened, and reacting to it as it happened. Dozens of shows dedicated to the Benoit situation are now on the feed, with more to come. But along with that come pay-per-view roundtables from that era, and backstage news on the Wade Keller Hotlines, and great Bruce Mitchell audio shows. Just an absolute education on professional wrestling history with him, along with top shelf analysis of that time period. So I encourage everybody who has found us here on YouTube or on the podcast side of things, on the audio side of things, to go VIP, pwtorch.com/go VIP. As I talk about the evolution of what we do, last year we switched from doing Blog Talk Radio live audio shows to being live on YouTube. And you can find my post shows on YouTube on the PWTorch channel. Just search PWTorch on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights. And then the shows are downloadable or viewable on YouTube afterwards on demand, and also on our podcast feed. Search Wade Keller in your podcast app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, iOS or Android, or stream the shows directly from our main website, PWTorch.com. That website also features news updates, live TV and pay-per-view coverage, flashback articles from 5, 10, 20, even 30 years ago. My reports on Raw from 30 years ago, I think, are a blast, along with some great writing from a great team of contributors. Chris Griffin just did a top 5 list on what-ifs and wrestling history of what if they had committed to making CM Punk a centerpiece star during his prime. What if they committed to Lex Luger instead of Bret Hart in the 90s? He explored some what-ifs there. So a lot of cool features you won't find anywhere else. Hope you're checking out pwtorch.com on a daily basis. One of the features you can find at pwtorch.com is Javier Machado's pay-per-view previews for WWE events. And he also is part of the PWTorch Daily Cast lineup, which features his show every week acknowledging WWE. And you could probably guess it is a show focused on WWE topics during the week. Javier, welcome back to the co-host chair. Good to have you.
Good to be here.
Standard Deviation says Javier's acknowledged WWE podcast this week was a 10 out of 10. Everyone should listen to it if they haven't already. Javier, Why do you think standard deviation gave you a 10 out of 10 this week? What made this week's episode special, or do you think it's always a 10 out of 10?
No, I'm honest. It's usually 9 out of 10.
I love it.
But no, yeah, I came out of we ended up talking about. Mike had some good questions in how we approach analyzing stuff. So it kind of left one thing to the other. I also you might end up hearing me reference to this. Now when I do analysis, because I'm personally working on something about how to view morality in wrestling, and I've been, and I touched upon that before. I don't want to get, I'll be going on for 3 hours. I'm gonna try to explain it now. Mm-hmm. But I think some people might have picked up that I was talking about what does Tiffany bring to the table in terms of for us to grab, and I talked about that with Gunther and some of the wrestlers just off the top, but I'm not promising anything. Because we're never promised anything, and I don't know what format, but I do want to talk about, because you and Todd often on the Fix end up talking a lot about heel baby faces and morality plays and that stuff, and I have opinions on that, but it's a lot.
Todd's contribution to that is wrestling should not or is not a morality play, and is uses that as a argument against like cartoonishly good Dudley Do Right good guys and Naomi cackling villain Power Ranger heels. The morality play aspect of it, I think, is a common theme of discussion.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from the lack of strong language, because the language that we use to discuss this kind of stuff is based on the insider terms and stuff that don't have set definitions. So when we talk about heel and babyface does not necessarily mean good guy, bad guy. A heel is who you're cheering against, and the babyface is who you're cheering for. And Austin was not a good guy, but he's the babyface.
Absolutely.
So that's why we have white meat babyface.
And I think there's there should be, and always ought to be, especially in 2025 in this modern era, a range of that baby faces should fall in different places in terms of their morals, their morality scale. I think sometimes people build up a straw man argument for the face. I hear it a lot. The face heel dynamic is passé. And the strong man is, people just want Dudley Do Right, Bob Backlund, just cookie cutter, John Cena, all that, whatever, Cody Rhodes even to a degree. And no, of course not. I mean, Steve Austin was a babyface. It was a babyface heel dynamic during that era. We're not using the term shades of gray anymore because it just means different things to different people. It's lost all meaning. But at least not on my shows am I encouraging it or doing it. Because it just, if you can't agree to what a term means, it shouldn't be used in a discussion trying to advance an understanding of each other. But yeah, it's a fascinating topic. And my belief is just whoever fans are likely to like, the promotion should amplify what they would like about them, put them in a situation where you want to see them succeed in their journey, and match them against an away team, a villain. And otherwise, in the novelty of seeing face or heel loses some of its luster over time. The novelty goes away, and you put people in a position too often, and I think Paul Levesque is doing it lately, where fans are having to choose between wrestlers they like, and I just don't think people tune into pro wrestling to have to struggle with, do I want to see this team win or that team win? Or do I want to see that team lose or that team lose? And yes, they'll often make choices, but I just don't think it's a peak fan experience, and I don't think it leads to a boom in business. I like face or heel being a novelty that's really special. But I'm not for the Dudley Do Right, cookie cutter, pure as fallen snow babyface characters, and that's a straw man argument if that's the main thing people use against that. Javier.
Yeah, so I want to devote some time, but this is working as an essay kind of thing. So
yeah,
in my spare time, I'm hoping to do something about that. If not, I'll still talk about it because I am trying to see it through, particularly if the Aristotle's the way he talks about vices and virtues. Virtues are the mean between two vices. So and that's what I'm exploring and
cool.
Kind of building up the wrestlers and how they fall in that category.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Come on, T Smalls, by the way, just going back to a couple minutes. The WWE Vault YouTube channel is run early mid-90s content. I'm watching it while reading the PWTorch archives. It's been great. Another thing with the VIP membership is you gain access to our Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletters, predating our internet launch by more than 10 years, going back to the late 1980s. They're available on demand in PDF or all text versions or both. in most cases. So check that out. Ashley M chimed in, by the way, joining late, but that women's segment was not it. Everything else aside, first Goldberg, now Trish with the championship shot just handed. I get the mindset. It's just a perception for me. And yeah, I just say, at least in this case, the champions are choosing their challengers in the case of Trish being invited into the mix. Whereas with Goldberg, it just felt like, well, he had a personal issue and he's Goldberg, so we're going to give him a title shot on NBC. Makes less storyline sense. Derek Hubbard, by the way, we're talking about Jade Cargill, says, I think WWE should look at the Batista run as the goal for Jade. A strong and consistent main eventer for 3 to 5 years. If she can get close to that level, she would be considered a success. Mark Biscotti says, Jade looks and presents herself like a star, and she's still young, so everything is still possible. One other comment, just catching up on the chat here. Scott TPA says, I've been listening to those VIP Vault shows on the Benoit tragedy. Wow. And again, I know, people have tight budgets and there's a lot of free podcasts out there and we offer a lot for free. But if you want to support what we do, we're not asking for charity. It's not just a tip jar, where you're just giving us money to support us, although that would be wonderful. We have super chats if you want to contribute to that. But what you get in return for VIP membership is access to 35 plus years of full-time teamwork covering this fascinating industry. And I will match our coverage of pro wrestling's biggest stories over the years with anyone, and that Benoit situation is one of them. So if you're interested in wrestling history and understanding things better and maybe having an appreciation for the fact that today's opinions are formed based on not just watching and cheerleading, but actually studying and analyzing the industry, and in my case, doing long-form interviews with some of the smartest, most successful or powerful and unsuccessful or short-term success people behind the scenes and on camera in the industry. Those are... most of those are available on demand to read or listen to also in the archives. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Okay. Javier said, I want to talk about, one more thing. If you're watching us live, join in the chat. If you prefer to email us because you don't watch us live or you just want to do a longer form contribution to the show, then you want to email us at wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. We also have ability to call us live. I almost always, but not always, also post that on our Patreon page. I forgot tonight. But maybe I'll get to that during the show. But if you can find it on the main VIP website in my TV report. If you want to be a live caller on camera or off, you can do audio only if you want also. So you're invited to call us. It's normally a VIP exclusive invite through either our main VIP site or Patreon. Okay. Javier, I said Charlotte and Alexa Bliss, that dynamic. I've enjoyed this. I actually think Charlotte is better interacting, and this isn't the case with Jade and Tiffany and Trish, like in the ring, but I think Charlotte's better in backstage segments than she is standing in the middle of the ring, where I think she gets preoccupied with chants or freezes up, and just not, even with all her experience, it's just not a good time for her to be out there. I think the backstage segments have been a safer place for her. I think she's loosening up a little bit, and I think that her interaction backstage set the table for her softening her kind of hard shell of her character when Alexa stole the pin from her. Well, didn't steal. Charlotte patronizingly I thought that was clever, by the way. Charlotte patronizingly patted Bliss on the head, and then the ref counted that as a tag, so Bliss got to actually hit a move and get the win. And instead of Charlotte being upset and attacking her or storming out, she was upset, and then she goes, well, we won. And now that I think about it, I don't mind you so much, and seemed happy and softened a little bit. I don't know where this is heading, but they've done a nice job, Javier, spending a number of weeks building some intrigue over what this dynamic is. And I think Bliss comes across as somebody who knows Charlotte better than almost anybody from their days in NXT, and she's finding a way to bring Charlotte out of whatever malaise she's been in and into a better place. That's how I see this at this point. Don't know how it's going to end. Ultimately, Charlotte's probably better off as a heel, but it also depends on who the heel options are for her as a babyface. They can make it work the other way. What do you think?
Yeah, man, if they could create a character for Charlotte, that'd be awesome. Something other than just Ice Queen. Particularly, it seems that they gave that title over to Jade now. There's a term for what I think they're doing with Charlotte called tsundere in Japanese anime, which is a normally like angry, like prideful or character, but has like a soft spot too. Interesting. And so I that's what I got the vibes for, because she like got happy for a second, and then she realized like, oh, this mask fell off, and she had to put the mask on real quick.
Yep.
So that's like typical Tsundere behavior in that stuff. Yeah, and that'd be fun. I mean, that'd be super enjoyable if that's the way they're going with where she finds like what's the term the kids use nowadays? Toots adorbs with Alexa, and and just see her mellow out around her. It'll be a total like odd couple kind of pairing, but it gives us a reason to actually like Charlotte or be invested in Charlotte if we start showing like something other than just like the normal like just thing that she portrays on screen, and we actually get a character out of her. And Bliss loves doing character work, so that should be it should be entertaining, and hopefully it's good too.
So what direction do you not want to see this going, Javier?
I don't want it to just be like, they win the titles, the tag team titles, and then like drop it in like 2 weeks and then feud immediately. I'd like to see a more, a more sustained time of them, together, so we can really explore different facets of their personalities.
Yep. I'm with you on that. Ashley M in the chat says, I like that the Charlotte character is following Alexa in a way, not being the center of the segment, but rather a reactionary role. I love the line where Charlotte goes, I'm not good sharing the spotlight. And Alexa, being the kind of the alpha in this dynamic, really, the grown-up, she just goes, she didn't say it, but she might as well have said, darling, honey, you haven't been in the spotlight in a while. I mean, it was very much like, well, she did say you haven't been in the spotlight in a while, but like the whole tone was, you need to wake up to the reality. You're living in the clouds up there. I thought it was a good line. Standard Deviation said, I think Charlotte's story with Alexa is shaping up to be a winner. I find her endearing when she attempts to uphold her confident facade opposite someone like Alexa, who is pulling out the child in her. Interesting framing of it. I like that. Jason D said, Charlotte's character has a soft spot, but is afraid to show it. Alexa's trying to dig deeper. I find it intriguing. Derek Mitchell says it'll be interesting to for Charlotte to showcase another side of her character because she's been doing Ric Flair's daughter gimmick for the entire run. Kyle Fassel, though, says, I'm still confused on Alexa's character. Talk about that, Javier. We talked mostly about Charlotte, but what is Alexa's character at this point besides the little but big sister to Charlotte at this point, in a way?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't know yet. They haven't really established her yet. She had said in interviews that she prefers playing a character, so she really liked it when she was the goddess and when she was with Bray Wyatt, and doesn't like and that her last part of her run was hard for her because that was the closest she was to herself. And I think that if she's got something to play off of and like a role that she's playing and she's acting even similar to her, I think we'll see better work than the previous run that she had where she kind of felt lost. Mm-hmm. What that is, I think we'll see as it develops as kind of like like somebody who said a little big sister kind of relationship. As to why, don't know. Maybe it's nefarious reasons. Maybe she was, going to try to get back for something she did when she was younger. Maybe she's paying back because they did say early when they're in that Charlotte was the only one who was nice to her when she was in NXT. Yep. So maybe she's just paying that back. So, and that might be all we get from that.
Yep. Very good. Okay. Let's shift to, there's a number of places I guess we can go on the show here. What do you want to cover next?
McIntyre coming back.
Yeah, I like that. I thought he has been so good the last couple of years, and I thought that the delivery is good. I'm not sure about taking an RKO right away and laying flat, but it did set up a match. So yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, that feels like it's just going to be taking Randy away from Cody while Cody deals with Cena. Yeah. And I think this more sets up because I think we've all been expecting a Randy Orton heel turn straight to Cody kind of thing. I think it's more it's time to really do something with McIntyre on that level. And what gave me hope for that was the fact that he brought up something I've been saying for the longest time, that Cody stole McIntyre's story. They touched upon it. McIntyre touched upon it because we both followed the exact same path to get back to WWE. So I am looking forward to the kind of work that they can do once they go up against each other. And I don't think it's a mistake that he dropped that little bit now. I just don't think that's the next Cody's. Well, I mean, it might be after he win. I'm assuming Cody wins SummerSlam. I'm expecting McIntyre to be like his first big major opponent.
I have reported that Drew McIntyre was scheduled to feud with Cody Rhodes had the John Cena situation not just taken over. Had if Cody had retained the title, that there were plans for a Drew Cody feud probably this summer. I think they've just had their eye on it all along and just got delayed a little bit. I'm expecting Cody to beat Cena at SummerSlam, and I'm expecting Drew to be Cody's next opponent as a heel. And I really like that they dropped a hint for that. I expect Drew to beat Orton for a variety of reasons. One, Drew's more important than Orton right now to the company. Him winning and having credibility of being in the main event world title picture is important to WWE. Orton is a legend, but he can afford to take a loss. He can't lose constantly, but like he can afford to take a loss to somebody of Drew's level and Cody's level for that matter, especially with the storyline they built in of Orton vowing to have killer instinct and stopping at nothing, but not being able to do it, and Cody was. And as you talked about, there's room for a heel turn with Orton too, perhaps, although I think fans will still cheer him, and that's going to be tough. As far as Drew goes, though, yes, Drew and Cody. Drew talking about the Cody path being similar, both leaving, reestablishing themselves outside of WWE, coming back. Drew, I don't know how much they're going to get into it, but Drew's time was 2000. And the pandemic hit, and he didn't have those crowds. And this peak moment for him as a babyface with a crescendo was a match they don't even like showing highlights of at the WrestleMania in the Performance Center. And so something was taken from him, and that, along with other things, storyline wise, has driven his heel character. Whereas Cody, gets booed out of AEW and shows up in WWE, and because Vince McMahon called him and courted him. And so he's the chosen one in the way Vince McMahon chose Drew McIntyre earlier. Vince McMahon called Cody and courted him. I mean, that is not storyline. And it was influential in Cody, kind of becoming a different person behind the scenes in AEW, even snapping at Tony Khan, and I don't know. It's just the off camera, there are instances where it was, people are like, whoa, what's going on? And Cody ended up courted by Vince and comes in, and then he gets a whole fresh start. And it turns into this just success story of a journey. And Drew's sitting around going, wait, you got these big crowds and you're the chosen one. And you can imagine him being bitter. I mean, you relate to it in real life and storyline. We've watched it with our own eyes and experienced it in real time. So I'm really looking forward to those promos, and I assume we'll get them, late August into the fall, whenever they do it, Javier. Drew deserves to be, with the performances he's been putting in, countering CM Punk, for instance, on the microphone. He deserves a full-fledged Cody feud, and I think this month and a half away keeps things fresh. I wish his return wasn't on a pre-tape show where, word got out for people on social media, but what you going to do?
Yeah, well, the stuff that Cody did was not possible without Drew doing it first. He followed in Drew's footsteps. Yeah. And I believe it was the Drew had an interview with you, right?
Yeah, after he left. And
I think he mentioned something along those lines that I'm going to show, I'm going to put in the work and stuff like that.
Yep.
And Cody did that, and because McIntyre had blazed the trail, it was a lot easier for him. Cody at one point was like in everything. He was, he was top of ROH, top of Impact, top of pretty much the way that McIntyre was. And then AEW happens, and then he shows up in WWE, and then Drew just has the story of like where when they first brought him back, they didn't really do anything with him. He was awesome on NXT. When he got to the main roster, they did nothing with him. They made him one of what's his face's stooges, Baron Corbin's stooges, and they didn't do anything until they start building him up against, and he beat Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar at the when he was at the top, but it was in front of an empty crowd, and then the story that you could tell if they don't talk about it. This is the one where it's the sit down interview where he gives a calm, long sit down interview and goes step by step, explaining why he hates Cody's guts, and how he stole his story. I wanted them to say that. I want to say, you stole my story from me.
Yeah.
That is like the nail to hit. I'm looking forward to it. And it's funny it's good that you mentioned that the Cena kind of derailed that, because it kind of felt like that was going to be the next step before the whole Priest stuff with McIntyre happened.
Yeah. Yep. And it's going to be good. And I don't think I don't know how much damage has been done to Cody, because of what felt like weeks, but was, just whatever, a couple episodes where he's hemming and hawing a little bit about, whether he's going to accept Rock's offer. And he said in a recent promo that offer is still standing, kind of laying the groundwork. And he said in, off-camera interviews, maybe my time as a babyface is coming to an end, which I think is just a defense mechanism for if the fans boo him. Well, I'm fine with it. But in reality, you don't call out a kid battling leukemia in the crowd. And if you think your days of being a babyface are numbered, I mean, Cody, I think Cody should be a babyface for years to come. And if he's not, I mean, it's gonna be the fault of some missteps by the booking and Cody himself, perhaps. But I think the fans like Cody, and if he's booked carefully, that I think there's, when I say years, I mean 2 years. I mean, maybe not more than that, but maybe of him being a centerpiece babyface act. I mean, he is. You got a compliment for the black hat heel characterization in the chat. Standard Deviation said, "I like Javier's black hat heel terminology. We need more words to differentiate." Is Cody a white hat babyface? What do we say?
Well, white meat babyface is usually the term that we use for that. And he's I think I mentioned in the podcast that one of the reasons that people liked him is because there was a lack of white meat babyfaces. And that's, because his thing is about courage, doing the right thing and being there for your friends, and, in not a corny way. And, he hits the mean of the virtues very well. So, I think that's, that level. I mean, it's funny to say because it's not authentic because Cody doesn't really feel authentic necessarily, but like the character that he builds around himself, whether it's authentic or not, he's saying the good stuff. He's about the closest that you could get to Hogan's, say your prayers kind of thing.
What do you think is not authentic about Cody?
I think that it's just the way that he drapes himself in the paraphernalia kind of thing.
I think that's him. I think that's him.
Well,
I think he is authentically that character.
Yes, he's when you're trying to outwardly present it, that could come across as, maybe not being real. I'm saying it's not that he's not, but it could come across that, which is why he sometimes he gets in trouble. He didn't really change his character that much in AEW. He just made a couple missteps that got people to look at him like the wrong way. Which is
I think there's an American Psycho type aspect to Cody Rhodes. I also think there's a deliberate strategy to dress the part of I think Cody is fastidious with his grooming and his clothing naturally. I think that's why Vince did that character with him a little bit. Here's how you trim your eyebrows and your nose hairs, man. And the grooming, which was just short-lived and weird. But there's other sides to him. We saw it on the reality show with Brandy. We saw it with his why am I drawing a blank? What was the goofy Cody character? Stardust.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought he was hilarious doing it. I thought he was super effective at that in the way that Matt Bourne was great at being doink. Like, I thought Cody embraced it and made the best of it. So he's got, this deadpan sense of humor. He's a smart guy. But he's fastidious in a way that can become off-putting. And I think what's authentic about him is sometimes there's a lack of self-awareness. And I point to certain things in AEW where it was like, I don't know if that's going to resonate with AEW fans if you do this or that. But all that said, I think we're seeing an authentic Cody. I do think there's like this American Psycho fastidiousness, unself-awareness but because he's so dedicated to the gimmick, so to speak, and wanting it to be authentic, it's sort of charming and endearing and ultimately believable. I think that's what makes his character work, is that when the cameras are off, that's still Cody. At the original StarCast, I watched him, he was like, nobody was around and he was in his suit hanging out with fans at his, meet and greet type thing, putting in extra time. He's the guy who, spends extra time signing autographs. You can say, well, the critics of that say he's a mark for himself and he just wants to soak up all the adulation from the fans, and that's his fuel. And he's, they can spin it negatively, but it's not inauthentic. Like, I think he just genuinely likes the attention fans give him and likes appreciation for his craft. I think he's super, super dedicated to being the best he can be at what he is, but I think he's a little insecure about athletically. He can't keep up with some of the, flashier wrestlers. He's not short, but he's not super tall. He's not super muscular. He's not thin. He's just sort of an average everyman, and I think he makes up for it with the suit and the like you said, the ring gear. But I don't, like, as I talk through it, I'm trying to figure out what's inauthentic about any of that, and and I know that word can mean different things. So go ahead, Javier. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a paradox. Because yes, it's authentically him, but because it's such a production, it comes across as inauthentic to some people. I from you could tell, but like at the same time, it's you're the best way to phrase it is like, Cody, sometimes you're too much.
Yes. Oh, totally. Totally. That was what veterans thought of him in AEW. When he was EVP, he'd come in and talk to him and act like he was, this sage giving sage advice, and then he'd leave the room and they'd just snicker and laugh. He is too much. And he's, when he's known to be super conscious of his publicity, and he's, known to, people think he's kind of defensive. Every criticism stings probably more than it should for somebody of his success level. But part of that is he is a fastidious perfectionist, and that's what makes him, I think, successful. And again, there's a charm to it in a way where with a lot of people, those traits would sound like it'd be a turnoff. And for him, if he has a little guidance to keep him out of a danger zone, straying outside of the lane, it works. And I mean, I like Cody. I like Cody as a person. I like him as a character. And I think he's fascinating. And I think his attention to detail and his professionalism is something that younger wrestlers who in any way can benefit from emulating him would benefit from emulating him.
Well, I just funny you mentioned American Psycho, because like he really is just like a bad day away from becoming Christopher Bale in that movie.
Exactly. No, I mean,
believe it. Yeah.
His nickname in AEW in certain circles was Psychopath. I mean, so.
Which, by the way, last time we talked, I mentioned that I was worried about his podcast where he might say something wrong, and kind of said what I meant by that was like, remember when he went on AEW and live TV and said that, hey, I'm having a biracial kid where we solve racism. That was kind of like, that had a lot of people say, what are you talking about, Cody? That's what I'm talking about. That once you say that, you're like that, you start maybe saying, oh, well, did he really mean that? Does he mean this? And that's where it snowballs out of control, which I think is what happened in AEW. I don't think it was any like one thing. It was just that, it just things snowballed. And I think WWE has handled that really well.
Don't forget the gender reveal.
Oh yeah, that stuff was like, it was stuff, It
was emblematic, symptomatic, indicative of a lack of self-awareness and an over the top aspect to Cody. There is an aspect of him that just does take things too far. And
I don't think any of that was malicious. None of that was malicious.
No.
But it was like weird.
He is by nature ostentatious to a fault, but if reined in just a little bit, it ends up not destroying all the good things about him. But it takes sort of a humility or listening to the right people, and being guided by the right people to go, okay, we're standing back and watching this. And it's like stand-up comedians. They go on the road, they do small clubs, they want to know what material works and doesn't, and they hone their act for the bigger shows based on that. And sometimes you just need somebody on the outside to go, that worked, that didn't. And with Cody, he does need that. Frankly, everybody could use that in their lives to some degree, but the stakes are high with Cody. Mike Myers, your co-host every few weeks on Acknowledging WWE, says, I had fastidious over-under at 4. It's got to be 3.5 or 4.5 because I think I said it 4 times. Maybe I've said it 5. Not counting this, by the way. That's cheating if you count me just reading the quote.
At least it wasn't shenanigans. That was mine.
Funny. Okay, some chat room comments on Cody. What's he? Anyway, all right. He wasn't on my list of major topics today, but Derek Mitchell says, I think Cody's appearance and demeanor is who he is now. It reminds me of Tim Tebow at the height of Tebow mania. Let's see. I don't want to miss.
And he got on some people's nerves too at some point.
Totally. Yep. Kyle Fassel says he doesn't have an edge, really. He's kind of not edgy cool in the way that Fatu, Stone Cold, and Hangman are. Totally true. I mean, that's a given. After seeing too much of that, it's easy to dislike someone like that. It will work for heel Cody. The attention and analysis of Cody as a babyface, when I say he should be a babyface for years to come, I think there's years worth of him being a babyface left, but he will be, I think, a tremendously satisfying heel in a way that John Cena has not been.
I think he could be like Mount Rushmore of heels.
Yes, but don't rush into it. It's like don't, just like take your time. Wait to consummate his heel turn. After a long engagement, and save it for the wedding night of him being a heel. Don't rush it. I don't know, that analogy didn't hold, but I was trying to find a way to make it work. All right. Derek Hubbard said Cody is a tryhard. That's not a put down. I'm a tryhard. Moreover, I'm a believer that sometimes you fake it to authentically become it. That is what he has accomplished. And I do think the suit wearing is his way of covering up. I think. I mean, I don't think it's the entire thing. I think part of it is it's a character he wants to portray, but he thinks the suit separate him from everybody else. That wearing a suit projects a higher level. Like at StarCast, Bruce Mitchell and I were doing a live podcast in the hotel lobby at StarCast, and the Young Bucks walked in, and they just looked like two guys with suitcase. And then Cody walked in, and it was royalty. He's got the suit, and it was just like, I don't know what vehicle he drove up in, but I'm sure it was high end and totally clean and sparkly. Like every moment he carries himself like it's a job interview to be seen as the top act in the industry. And the suit is part of that. Javier and I, can work against him, but he's with fans. But it weirdly, when I say weirdly, like I don't think that's a big thing that's going to turn him. But when he becomes a heel, it will be a source of heat.
More than the suit, his dog is immaculately groomed.
Yes.
No, I mean like impressively groomed.
Yes.
So you could, I mean, just at that point, it's like he totally is. I forgot his name in the movie with the whatchamacallit, the card made out of bone and stuff. It's uncanny now that I think about it.
Yeah. Fan Blast says, I thoroughly believe the AW fans were testing Cody and the company. It was early on, and the fans wanted to know if they were really willing to listen. We want you to be heel now. Your move. I think a lot was at play, but yeah, I mean, part of it could have been the fans saying, we think you'll be a good heel, and go for it. Kyle Fassel said, Cody is an egomaniac, but has no idea. Adam Kidd says the heel turn has to come when Cody is totally bought in or it will fail. Adam Kidd adds, Cody has always come across as fake to me. Yeah, I mean, I get it. And that's why, like, I think I just don't think there's anything fake about Cody. I think what you think is fake is what some of his colleagues look at as being a mark for himself, like just living the gimmick. Like and I'm not on the side of those people who say that. I mean, I get why they say that, but I just think he's crafting carefully and fastidiously, Mike, a certain image, and it's a strategy, but it's not I don't think Cody sits around mocking his public image. I think he buys into it and goes to sleep and wakes up thinking about it. Derek Mitchell says, I can see how Cody might give off a televangelist vibe where people want to believe but might be skeptical of his sincerity. I like Cody, so he doesn't bother me. I get that. And my defense is I don't think Cody sits around at the bar laughing about people buying into his act. And I think there are televangelists who do in their very inner circle. That's not Cody. This is what you see with Cody is what you get. Derek Mitchell adds, Michael Jordan wore suits after every game because he wanted to look immaculate. I think Cody has followed a similar blueprint. There was that time when the NBA was trying to create an image of they wanted to break away from some degrading, not degrading is overstating it, but less than glamorous images of what the NBA was about, and they required athletes to wear suits. Their coaches had to wear suits up until recently on the sidelines, but players wore suits coming and going from the game. And then WWE instituted that policy 20-some years ago, and it was controversial, but it was for the same reason that the feeling was you're always on camera, you're always making an impression at the hotels. They're going to treat us a certain way if our wrestlers don't come in wearing fanny packs and sweatpants from the gym with sweaty armpits. And so the idea was you can't be seen in public or traveling. And wrestlers hated it because it's hard to get suits that were comfortable, and it was a pain to pack an extra bag when you just wanted to go from the airport to the gym. But it was for similar reasons, and I think Cody, does think that makes a difference. All right, we're turning this into the Cody psychoanalysis post show here. I don't know how if we want to spend a ton more time on it, but the chat's engaging in it, and so I don't know. We'll keep reading some comments here and then shift. JC Scooby 1976 says Cody overdoes it sometimes, and time to lose. I'm assuming. Oh, it's time to lose the what do you want to talk about? That's an area where I think Cody might be a little self-conscious, thinking, do I still want to be doing this? Every once in a while. Jason D from Australia says, poor Cody comes across as fake when he isn't. Poor CM Punk, not allowed to be happy. Sorry, Cody, you are fake. We don't buy you wearing suits. Sorry, Punk, you will always upset. We don't buy you being happy. The whole Punk thing. There was a video tonight where was it the 4th of July video? Or am I complaining of something else where they showed Punk right as they're talking about integrity. And I was like, oh, they put Punk in there a week after the Saudi Arabia thing. David Bixenspan has unearthed an interview that he did with Barstool Sports. Punk saying, I'll never go Saudi Arabia, and really going heavy into that. And yeah, maybe I'm looking too hard, but it did kind of come across as trying to just twist the knife a little bit. He said that he wanted he said he would never go to Saudi Arabia, and was critical of Saudi Arabia, which of course runs counter to him saying he was just upset at Miz, and his apology was like it never had anything to do with Saudi Arabia. So that's going to haunt him, Javier. Anyway, but
yeah, my on the podcast, one of the thing I was most happy with was the blood I drew when I said the whole yin yang thing that he was doing with Cena, because the yin yang also has the black has the white inside of it, and the white to show that they're not just separate. Mm-hmm. And what I said was that Cena's thing is that he is fake, but being fake is really who he is, while Punk pretends he is, but in reality he's fake. That's where the two of them are like the yin yang, and that fits with Cody too. Cody and Cena cut from the same cloth.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's similarities.
Not so much on camera, but behind.
Yeah. I was deciding how much I want to expand on that.
We've seen the Bellas, so we kind of seen some of what Cena's like behind doors.
Yeah. Kaf also said I agree with Wade. I think regarding the heel turn, there was another comment here. Oh, Ashley M said Cody does too much off screen when no one is looking for all of this to be fake. And Kaf also said, yeah, Cody would love this chat. I don't know. Cody might be the one who focuses on the two things that pierce what he's trying to project, rather than the 19 nice things that people are saying about him that is totally in line with what he's going for. Okay, let's shift to the Solo Sakoa Fatu situation. We had a main event match where Jacob Fatu teamed with Jimmy Uso against JC Mateo and Solo Sakoa. Solo did the clean job, but then, quote, got his heat back by being the orchestrator, the architect, the leader, the coach of the post-match attack that included Tala Tonga, who is named Tala, at least in part, if not entirely, because he's tall. Javier, what do you think of the name, and what do you think of what they did with Jacob and Solo tonight?
Well, I'm just happy for you not to have to say Hikuleo anymore. Tala Tonga. It's going to take me a while to probably remember that. It's funny because Mike did say, "Oh, I remember that because he's tall," and I'm like, "Yeah, it doesn't work. My brain doesn't work that way for some reason." But yeah, Tala Tonga, another big heater to go along with the group. It seems like the group maybe has a name. Sounds like it might be MFT.
My Family Tree.
Yeah. So
Is that does MFT have any other connotation?
I believe so. Just don't remember off the top of my head, and I need to hit the internet for that.
It stands for marriage and family therapist, according to Google. I doubt that's it.
Yeah, no. I used to remember it, but I'm
managed file transfer. Managed file transfer says
but yeah, it sounds like that's what it is, and yeah, I mean, I was kind of surprised that they went with the title. I knew the title was going to change, and then the thing was going to be at Saudi, but there we are. I found it interesting. They said my family's all together without Tama Tonga being there.
I know. That struck me too. So I don't know.
So, and considering the fact that how the numbers are going to be arrayed, if there's going to be a 4-on-4 thing, maybe Tama finds himself on Team Jimmy and Jacob. I'm not going to run the whole, catchphrase 99 times again, because at this point it is what it is. And hey, I mean, they did get the heat back by destroying Jacob Fatu in a believable way. Completely overmanned, and we get to see the guy into it now who's been a monster to be slowed down a bit. And I'm curious to see where things are going, because they're outnumbered. They're 4 now, right? Yeah, 4 to 2. Sounds like Roman might be coming back to help deal with this, and then you need one more person. Is it going to be Jay, or is it going to be somebody else?
Yep. Kyle Fessel said, I thought Solo said, these guys are my NFTs. And I was like, what the? Jason D says, MFN tribe is question mark. Is that connotation? Let's see. There's another comment here, but the chat is hard to keep up with. Derek Hubbard says, huge respect to Solo tonight. JC needs to watch how Solo feeds a comeback. He did a great job bumping, selling, and feeding for the next spot for Fatu, the most underrated attribute of a good heel. And Adam Kidd says, yeah, Solo's been really good the last few months. So props to Paul Levesque for giving us a clean finish tonight. I didn't blink or look away at my written report on PWTorch.com and miss something that made this a non-clean finish, did I?
Yeah, unless I did too. I don't think so. So
yep. So Solo, what do you think of him doing the job? I mean, yeah, quote gets his heat back, but he is US champ. I mean, what did you make of that decision? And because I don't want to second guess it, I'm all for clean finishes, but when it's not done very often, it becomes more noteworthy. That's why it's good if they do it a lot. It would become less. It'll have positive impact in the sense that the fight ended with an outcome that matters, but we won't read into it. Viewers won't read into it as always being buried or his best days are over. It's just the way it works in WWE, which is there's that painful period of 3 months or 9 months or 15 months, but eventually people stop thinking a guy's getting buried just because he loses clean.
Yeah, no, two purposes to this. Number one is to establish the fact that Solo's not on Jacob Fatu's level. That Jacob Fatu in a fair fight will beat him 9 out of 10, or if not 10 out of 10 times, because that's how badass Jacob Fatu is. That's one thing, and the other thing more immediate is that now Fatu has a claim to, hey, I pinned him, I get my title shot.
You mentioned Jacob Fatu earlier while coughing. How do you feel his dynamic with Jimmy is going? And obviously he is worthy of meticulously protecting what fans like about him, and not screwing it up if you're WWE, but you don't want to be so scared to screw up that he just becomes, too narrow. So how do you evaluate what they're doing with him now?
Well, I mean, with that particular segment, I think that they're just trolling me by having them speak in nothing but catchphrases, because I think the entire conversation between the two of them were catchphrases. I think it was done playfully. But I like the idea of it. I'd like for them to more, not speak in catchphrases so we could actually get a better feel of how they feel for each other and the way that they interact. And, Jacob Fatu's obviously should be the alpha. How does Jimmy feel about that? Jimmy usually was the alpha when he was with Jay. So what does he feel like not being the alpha around here? I know he was used to it with Roman, and I'd like to see some more of those dynamics. Knock on wood that we get some soon. if this is going to be a longer term thing, but there's potential there, and I'm looking forward to where they're going. I mean, this show, I think, felt like it said a lot of potential stuff. So heading into SummerSlam.
Brock Bedingfield says Jacob's catchphrase problem is becoming a problem, like Javier says. Solo has Cal Fassel says Solo's improved so much. I love to see a clear heel who actually gets some heat. This is interesting. Jason D says, could Tama Tonga come back as a face? Being discarded by Solo. My family's complete. What about me? Does he round things out, Javier?
Yeah, that was always. I was thinking if he's going to be the fourth person, if it's not Jay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to bring Jay over immediately, because I think you kind of maybe want that a little higher profile. And I'm interested in what he's going to be doing by himself with. Because I'm sure something with Zayn and Gunther and those people it's going to happen over on Raw.
And that's a comment in the chat regarding Roman Reigns. Isn't Jason D says, isn't Roman above this now? And I do think Roman coming back to feud with JC Mateo, and so even I guess Tama Tonga, if he gets over, there's a match there. But yeah, I think it's more the Heyman. I think it's Mike Steff says Roman isn't coming back to this. I'm quite sure he's getting involved with the Rollins Heyman faction. That's what Mike Steff is saying. I agree with him there. And yeah, eventually you can cross paths, I guess, but I think Roman's thing should be with Heyman. Yeah,
likely, unless they want to officially pass the Samoan torch over to Fatu or something.
Yeah. Kyle Fassel likes Tama coming back as a face. It makes a lot of sense too. Derek Mitchell says Jimmy needs a new theme song in the worst thing possible. Curse Steph Rebel. Jacob, Kyle Fassel says Jacob is too good for all the catchphrases. He should be more selective. Andrew WR says WWE showed you can have a solid tag match, forward storylines in under 10 minutes. I agree. That there wasn't a lot of time left on the clock, but they got a lot done in that final 10 minutes, or I think it was about 11 minutes. But yeah, point is the same. Anything to add to that, Javier?
No, I think that's pretty much.
Yep. Okay, so trying to think about there might have been something else with Fatu. So let's shift to the tag division. We've had a request to discuss the tag team division. Another instance of all the tag teams gathered backstage. It's too much of that, but I'm not going to start defending it, but I understand that I'm acknowledging that it has been something that has been followed through and become relevant to how they do things, such as Nick Aldis today going, one of you from each of these teams is going to take on the Wyatts in a tag match. It's like it's serving a purpose to have them all gathered together. I don't know. Yeah, Javier, talk about that.
The frustrating is that there's a lot of talent there because I saw the Motor City Machine Guns. I'm like, man, you're wasting them. Same thing with Street Profits and DIY and even Humberto and Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza. You have a lot of things that they could. And I understand the problem is that you don't have the time. I know. I get that. I get that. I understand that. That's what's frustrating about it, because I'm like, I'd love to see these teams pairing off and fighting to see for Dominion, and I'd love to see the actual tag team division. But you're going to get 15 minutes for all these people. And I did like the idea of them having to choose one member from each team to go against this, but it's frustrating. I understand it.
Yeah. On the tag team front, Kyle Fassel says the big issue I have with all the teams backstage together is there's no heat between them. They can just all be hanging out with each other calmly. I don't think the feuds or the rivalries or the issues between them would necessitate them just brawling when they're in each other's vicinity, especially because the GM is always there. So presumably there's the teachers in the room, the authority figure, the boss, whatever. We can't be too unruly. But I get that it's pro wrestling. It can strike you as, wait, these guys are fighting, but they're all just kind of coexisting. I think I think a lot of them just seem, it does feel like kids in a classroom with a teacher. That's part, the optics of it is bad. They're trying to get a lot accomplished, but like the Street Profits are not coming across as big stars by just sharing the screen with, DIY whining and doing not comedy, but like they're trying to be obnoxious. And then, the Motor City Machine Guns just don't really have their own, their own space to just get over and be themselves. And then like Fraxium, Brock Benningfield in the chat says, my opinion, they should have Fraxium run through all the other teams to focus on them and get the crowd behind them on their way to the titles. And instead they are just, Fraxium are defined down already. And the push, and I like the way they did it tonight. I wanted to bring it up, which was the way that they, the announcers really talked about Andrade and Rey Fenix having chemistry out of the start. Wade Barrett, who's great on commentary, just said, sometimes it takes teams a long time to gain chemistry, and these guys just had it right from the start. They're really pushing this idea that this is a top-level tag team, and I think lip service frames it for the casual viewer and also sends a signal meta-wise that we're really behind this team. They don't say that about a lot. The problem is it's coming at the expense of Nathan Frazier and Axiom, who are super talented and super athletic. So I'd rather have both of those teams on separate shows getting pushes instead of one kind of trampling over the other. Your thoughts on that, Javier?
Yeah, that's one of the things I was thinking about. I'd almost rather the entire tag team division get shunted over to Raw. You have an extra, not a full hour, but you have a little bit of extra time there. And they don't have the tag team division over there that you probably, devote 2 segments, to tag division stuff, particularly since you lost Grande Americano and Gable. You got the other guy coming in, but you lost the Gable, which was an anchor there. Maybe like try to breathe life into one of your 2 tag divisions. But yeah, I mean, I again, it feels like all the tag teams that, even though Frazier can't, Frazier and Fraxium, whatever, I'm not gonna play that game up like that.
We got all the time in the world for you to get right, Javier.
I'll use the portmanteau. Have them basically, they did good to promote them as being a good team. You got Andrade and Phoenix together. You have, again, all these people. I agree with you. They shouldn't have had Street Profits at all in that segment, because that devalues them being the champions. And I think if I remember correctly, in a lot of those other segments they've done with all of them together, they haven't been there. I think the only reason they were this week was because they needed one of them to face one of them to be one of the members to face the Wyatts.
That's true. That is true. I mean, they would probably defend that in that case. It served that purpose.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, again, I'm frustrated because there's so much good talent, and I'd like to see them explore that. And it's kind of just, because I think, I think for Axiom had they stayed in NXT to get more exposure still. But hey, I get it.
Some chat comments here. Jason D said, it has helped put the Wyatts over as a big threat that everyone has come together to fight them off. Javier, what do you think of the Wyatts? They got the big ring entrance. I'm not sold on Uncle Howdy's verbal, the noises he makes in the ring. It seems to be something he's leaning on. I would vote for workshopping some other things. But is there still a mystique there with this group? Anyway, throw it to you for that.
Yeah, I mean, like the Wyatts used to be like a scary team, and then you kind of got overexposed, and they were just like 3 guys doing this gimmick. To me, the Y6 right now they're just these 4 guys plus Nikki Cross doing a gimmick. Yeah. It's a fine gimmick, but like what they had, they never follow up on the story. They never followed up on what they means to be together. The occasional drop a word here and there that you have forgotten about us, because then Nikki Cross was doing had a promo like that or something, but or it might have been online.
Well, the term I used early on with them is they were creatively abandoned.
Oh yeah, and twice.
Yep.
Not just once, twice.
And I don't care about injuries. You can do vignettes with someone who's injured, or you can do stories with someone who's not even available to do vignettes. They should be doing segments where they're in a setting somewhere that doesn't feel, doesn't be otherworldly or cartoonish or supernatural, but just, kind of like the Judgment Day have their clubhouse. Like, there should be insight into, they did the videotape gimmick, but with Pat McAfee, but there should be insight into the dynamic. What do they do outside of the TV show narrative? And also, what is the dynamic between them? Who's Joe Gacy? Like, what's he about? How does he relate to Uncle Howdy? Same with Eric Rowan. We don't get enough of that. So they're very one-dimensional, very underdeveloped.
All you need to do, find a stairwell, have them cut one person cut a promo, and then somebody chime in. Whoever's going to be, dealing with stuff similar, because that's what got Sanity over back in NXT, and they're kind of like same kind of thing. Just have them, sit in a stairwell, like Raven style.
But interact with each other. Don't just take turns talking. Like, let's get to know. That was the strength of the Bloodline. Is we knew the hierarchy, and we knew about with JD and Carlito in Judgment Day. Like, there's comedy relief. There's the class clown, or the person. What's the term in a family where somebody is trying to avoid conflict? So they act. There's a classic term for the person who's always trying to lower the tension in the room at the expense of ever actually being able to stand up for themselves. But just there's been creatively abandoned in that way. And I think Joe Gacy and Dexter Lumis and Nick, I mean, there's room to do that with them, and they haven't. And it is starting to feel a little too late. Although tonight they put them over again. Nick Ald's like, hey, if they win, you got to deal with them, and they won. So now it does seem like, so start next week, WWE. Let's get on it. Let's not. There's one more chance here. Make them count.
I will give them props. I think it was last week they did give you Loomis's backstory on commentary, so that did help a little bit. But like, as to the why are you destroying the tag team division? Why is this what you've decided to do with your because you were forgotten. What was the why is it this what you're doing? A little bit of that, talk to. But I would just have like conversation between two people, and not because that group is just so big that you don't want to get everybody lost in the screaming match like what you get in it works for Judgment Day, because that's just they're a mess. But this way you get personal interactions with two people, similar to the Big Bang Theory. As they're walking up the stairs, and you always have they pair off like two different members of the cast as they're walking up the stairs and have a conversation. Do that. Have two random members talk about sit down and talk about what what's going on.
I still have in Seinfeld when Elaine and George Jerry left the booth, and they had never been alone together. Like, I don't know if it was weeks or years. I can't remember what season it was, but they're just like, we need Jerry. We don't know how to interact without Jerry. Like, what? You got your friend group, but you're like, there's times when you're never alone with somebody in your friend group because you're brought together by some third person and so anyway, that's neither here nor there.
One of the few episodes I saw.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, your chuckle definitely made it seem like you had seen that episode. Derek Mitchell says MCMG has zero heat or reaction from the crowd. I haven't seen a legacy tag team since the Rock and Roll Express in the WWF in 1998. Get no reaction. Yeah, I mean, you said it, Javier. The Machine Guns deserve better, and they're not getting it because of the way that this division is being booked. Kyle Fassel said, I'd like there to be massive heat between a few of the teams to where they can't keep their hands off each other. Jason D said, I really enjoy Gargano as a Weasley heel and using the excuse Candice wasn't even here. That
was a great line. Yeah.
Gargano and Ciampa are really entertaining in this role. I mean, they are embracing it. But it's part. No, but everyone's kind of getting the little moment. But it almost feels like the tag team division is a faction, and there's comedy relief. There's whatever people who are above it. There's people who are lost in the crowd, and but it would need more time. And they're not going to give that to the tag division. We can have I shouldn't give WWE ideas, but if they want to crowd a weekend on an AEW pay-per-view weekend, they should do an all tag team PLE, even if it's just on YouTube. So
my camera, there we go.
Javier, yep, thumbs up. Kyle Fassel said, with all that.
Sorry. My favorite line with the Gargano was the you gave us an impromptu match. We weren't even ready.
Yes,
that was a great line. I chuckled.
The weaseliness of Gargano is he's a really good heel. Kyle Fassel said, with all this being said, I really like the tag match tonight. Yes. Just, really, I mean, well, there were the bigger tag match and then the 2-on-2 with Fraxium. There's some good athleticism on this show. I mean, you want that to not be news. We pointed out more so when it's not there, but this was a show that showed off some good, there's some good good athleticism throughout. Andrade and Phoenix, Jacob and Jimmy against JC and Solo, was actually solid in the ring too. The Wyatts against Montez and Alberto and Gargano and Sabin was good. Everything was a tag match because Piper Niven and Alba Fire, Charlotte and Bliss, and BFAB and Mia Yim. Speaking of all tag team shows, Javier, we just had one tonight, but it was, makeshift tag teams and triple threat and 4-on-4.
It's funny. I think that no one's told Andrade that he's not in AEW anymore. Because he's been like every single match he's been in. He's been trying to go for it in every single match. His feud with Carmelo Hayes was great. And now the stuff that he's doing, he feels like he's going balls to the wall. He's trying to earn his minutes basically.
He did the thing that I dislike. Well, you tell me, Javier.
Was it the moment where he basically had the guy in the corner and then he starts doing something to get the crowd going, and then he runs?
So Andrade had his opponent down, whoever it was.
Thought of you in that moment.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it's like, what are you doing? There's a match to win, and I'm like, he better land the moonsault. And of course, he didn't because he was preoccupied trying to get crowd heat, which makes no sense if you're trying to win. You should portray an athletic. But fortunately, after he landed, he then did a standing moonsault. But it was a consolation prize for him after being distracted by trying to get the crowd engaged. It's a lot of baby faces do it, but it's a big thing with luchadors. And WWE should just have a little meeting and say stop it. Because it takes weight out of it. We don't know if it takes anyone else out of it. It takes me out of it, and logically it makes no sense. All right, Cal Fassel adds, could we benefit from some shorter matches, maybe even say some jobber matches more regularly to get more teams over and highlighted on TV? I'd be for it, but man, I've touted squash matches for decades, Javier, but there are multiple generations of people who are like, why would I want a match when I know who's going to win? And why would I want a match when it's going to be short? It's like, if you experience it, the benefits that come from it are great. You get to see the ring entrance, you get to see signature moves, you get to see jobbers who are sometimes pathetic and hilarious and frumpy or undersized, whatever. You get like I feel bad for this generation, Javier, of wrestling fans who don't get to have their favorite jobbers because we don't get jobber matches or squash matches or enhancement matches because we got to use a euphemism to stop people from feelings from being hurt. But I would like to see it worked in. They do it when they're introducing talent, like Nia Jax comes back, we're going to do that. Or, when there's somebody new they're trying to get over, they'll do squash matches. But I think there's a way to work it in.
Yeah. I mean, either that. Here's the issue. Like, in terms of the length of the matches, I'm fine because I didn't enjoy that Fraxium match as much because I'm expecting something to happen. I'm like, is the White Six going to show up at this point? And am I going to invest 15 minutes of energy into this match and then not get a finish? That's kind of been my problem. I haven't really enjoyed like matches on TV, because of that reason. Is I'm expecting something to go wrong, for the match not to count. So I find it hard to engage. And then like as soon as the match is over, I'm like, oh wow, so it was a pretty good match from what I gathered. I should go back and watch it. I don't have time to do it. So give me good finishes. If you're not going to do that, then yes, more jobber matches. It loses a little bit in modern time because then it was so you can see your favorite babyface hit his special moves, and then so you buy the pay-per-view to see him do it on like the heel you want to see him beat. Yeah. So I get the reason why you might not want why that's kind of fallen out of vogue, but choose one or the other. If you don't want to give us finishes and real finishes on the TV show, then jobbers would be another way you could do it.
And sometimes they just pick a team that gets a tiny little push, and then they end up just being a team that always loses. But I think there's some charm in having. And again, it was hard to explain, why are these wrestlers showing up for work just to get beat up all the time, and why are they matching? I mean, in a logic standpoint, it doesn't make sense to have mismatches on TV all the time. But I think there's still, I think there's room for something creatively in that respect to pull that across. Now I have a storm alert going on up here at my cabin for storms that are coming through. So hopefully that my mic isn't picking that up too strong, but that's going on in the background. Okay. Another segment, maybe we'll close with this, is Derek Mitchell says, what do you think of Priest and Black's interaction backstage discussing R-Truth? And I thought he was Ron Killings, and they just keep putting R-Truth on the graphics. They're not going with Ron's idea of changing his name.
Yeah. I don't. It's funny. I like the idea of Aleister Black and Priest themselves together, not with Truth in the middle of it. I don't like the Truth. The thing where Truth is still going to be scatterbrained and getting involved with, basically screwing over what Aleister Black is doing. But he's not scatterbrained the same way that he was. It's just like now he's scatterbrained and as opposed to scatterbrained and silly. Yeah. So I'm not, I don't like the three of them paired together. I would rather see them paired, together as opposed to all three of them together. Yeah, I mean, it's been weird, and it still doesn't feel like it really has a direction. Obviously, it's leading it to, Priest and Aleister Black and Truth in some way, shape, or form. But how that's gonna how they're gonna pair off is gonna be wait and see. And can't say I'm super interested with all three of them involved.
Yeah. By the way, chat had some comments on jobbers. Derek Mitchell said Iron Mike Sharp and Tiger Chung Lee in the WWF. Kyle Fasseldones, Matt and Jeff Hardy were jobbers too. I think it's sort of like I don't know, G League or developmental players in the NBA. It's like, hey, you're only there for garbage time, and you're going to get dunked on unless you're playing against other deep bench players. But some of them rise up and end up being starters, and you could tell that story a little bit too. But yeah, by the way, Derek brings up the Mulkey brothers, Barry Horowitz, Dusty Wolf, Randy Hogan, and Tom Stone. Tom Rocky Stone was one of my favorites. He always looked like he was showing up for a beating, and he was in the ring practically against his will. Rusty Brooks was one who they made fun of because he had sort of the Otis body, and man, did Jesse Ventura love ripping on him. So it's just a fun slice of pro wrestling that's kind of lost now. You get Elton Prince and like that kind of thing where they're characters, but they lose a lot. But it's not the same thing as the jobbers who just lose all the time. Todd Martin, by the way, reviewed thoroughly Barry Horowitz's new autobiography. Spoiler alert, Barry Horowitz came across as extremely unlikable and unself-aware, but it's still a fun window into his journey in wrestling as a jobber. He's the pat yourself on the back guy. And he did a thorough review of that in this week's flagship edition of the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast. So if you haven't listened to that yet, that dropped on Thursday rather than our normal time, Tuesday. Search Wade Keller in your podcast app and listen to that. And late in the show is a thorough walkthrough Barry Horowitz's new autobiography. And he is one of the more famous jobbers over the years. I'm not always a fan when jobbers become like celebrities in the wrestling storylines. Like to me, the jobber it's not like James Ellsworth, where it's like, oh, he's so fun to make fun of, we're going to turn him into a character, like, or Mikey Whipwreck in ECW is kind of that, and then he grew into something else. But just let them be jobbers who never get any attention. They just get beat up. You don't know why, but they keep showing up for work and getting beat up. It'd be fun. I don't bring that up very often anymore because it is like Javier, you said, it's not the business now is making a lot of money off of TV, and I don't think they want to take a chance on losing the audience. But in this culture of short attention spans, AEW could use shaking things up in terms of match length a little bit. And for every once in a while, you just got to see somebody just take a beating and find somebody who's really good at taking bumps to put over somebody's offense. I think it'd be a good way to establish some of the female wrestlers, their personalities, their movesets, by having them against somebody who, and in a sense, AEW kind of does that, but the matches are just longer than they should be in that sense. But there are women who have losing records, especially on AEW Dark, who show up occasionally on Collision or Dynamite. So I think there's probably a modern spin on it that could happen. Well,
you could use you could marry to the concept of speed, where you'll have wrestlers that are just there for speed, and they're athletic wrestlers that could maybe get in like a spot or two of flippy stuff, and then they just get killed by whoever the better wrestler is. So you still get some of the action, but the other person's never going to win, because he has like huge holes in his games. There's not really, he goes for Hurricane Karana, but then like the other person's too strong, he can't get him over, and then he gets power slap, that kind of thing.
Yep. Cavanti Smalls says the jobbers worked more during the 80s and 90s because there wasn't television overexposure back then. So when the star appeared, it mattered. C shows were around too. The WWE used to run 3 house shows per night sometimes. They'd split the crew into groups of 3 and run C shows at the smaller venues. Or it maybe means the TV shows when there were like 3 syndicated shows. Yes, I mean, I am aware it is contextually a different world today in pro wrestling than back when it was 1 hour of WWF Superstars, 1 hour of WWF Wrestling Challenge with Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan. And just seeing Randy Savage come out to his music with Elizabeth and hit a top rope elbow was wonderful. And we can't go back to that. You'd have to put a modern spin on it, but a lot of things come around, and it'd be different. And I think there's some positives. I think if they put some time into it, I think they could come up with a way to make it work and shake up match length and frankly just give some people in AEW and WWE a chance to establish and reestablish who they are. Just have, sometimes a heel giving a brutal beating to talented wrestlers who take great bumps is a way to build anticipation for them against a credible babyface team. And so I think that can be used as a tool. As far as the Barry Horowitz book, the chat's asked, Kyle Fassel said, Todd's review made me not want to read the book. Jason asked, is the book worth skipping or not? I mean, if you have an attachment to that era of Barry Horowitz on TV, I mean, I wouldn't say it's not worth reading, but Todd did put it in the bottom tier of his 5 tiers for wrestling books. So, I mean, it's not recommended, but I don't think it's useless. But yeah. I mean, you have to listen to Todd's review to kind of get the full context of it. I think it's up to each person to decide. There's a lot of good wrestling books out there. I wouldn't make it the first book you read, unless you really have a curiosity about some stories about that era that Barry was mostly part of. Brock Benningfield says Rusev plowing through jobbers might work for him. There's an example. And Kyle Fassel agrees there's a new way of doing jobber matches, I'm sure.
Almost feels like what AEW does, really, with the AR Fox. Yeah. It's just,
But like AR Fox would be talked about the next week after losing, like, oh, he's a hot commodity. Like they still, you want people who fans aren't sad that they lost. The pathetic, like, I shouldn't say you don't want to look like you're not putting athletes out there, but like they just clearly look like they're there to get beat up. I mean, I don't even know if it has to make sense, and I'm Mr. Logic and all that with wrestling, but like, just have some great bump takers who know they don't have the charisma or the size or whatever to do it, but they're good at taking bumps and making people look like $1 million. There's just sort of a charm in that, and I think it could get a bit of a cult following and have a benefit. But don't push them, don't give them a win on in hope spots. Like, just have them get their asses kicked. Let's see what if the chat is speaking of jobbers, they made Goldberg. Raven made Goldberg. Like, I mean, wrestlers who paid dues in the territories and worked hard and established characters and then were booked to lose to Goldberg, they're the ones who made Goldberg. And Goldberg, he's a nice guy, but back then he did not show appreciation for what he was being gifted, that very few wrestlers were gifted. I will say very few wrestlers, if they were gifted what Goldberg was gifted, would get over like he did, because he had very special traits and charisma. But it was the name wrestlers who were doing jobs to him on TV that really woke. I watched it in real time and I was like, whoa, okay, they're serious about this guy now. He just squashed Raven, and I don't know if Goldberg understood the business enough to know what he was gifted when it comes to that. As far as AEW doing it, Kyle Fassel says, no, Javier, AEW doesn't do jobber matches. They give people 20-minute matches, but they're going to lose. Yeah. Kyle Fassel also says, read the Bret Hart book instead. Yeah, there's so many books you should read instead of Barry Horowitz's. Again, unless you have a niche interest in him or that era, or you've read all wrestling books, but you want to read another one. Standard Aviation said, MFT means Mother Effin' Tongans, not just My Family Tree. Someone else had said it stands for My Family Tree. We acknowledged that at the beginning. I said it culturally doesn't mean something else that I'm just not aware of, and whatever in pop culture. But yeah, maybe people attach different things to it. Jason D says AW matches always go 20% longer than they should. I think there's I think there's something to that. All right. Javier, anything else you want to add here? We're well past an hour and a half in. I'm ready to wrap up unless the chat wants to quickly chime in with something we left out or you want to talk about. Anything else, Javier, from you?
I don't think so. I don't have that many notes. And nope.
Yeah. They did the 4th of July video, which was like, are they paying attention to what's going on in this country? Are we really? I don't know. It's a rough time to be. It was painful to watch them talk about what this country stands for, given so much of what's going on right now. But that's a whole other topic. Oh, Kyle Fassel says he wants the Javier theme song. That would be nice. You up for that, Javier?
Sure.
I mean, Mike Myers graced our presence. Let's do this. All right. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Javier, thank you very much. Great having you on tonight.
Happy 4th of July. I put up the American gnome up there. If I could just find my finger there.
Yes.
In my background. So taking place of the Indiana Jones hats on the fridge.
Jason D wants to know what is happening. Fan Blast says, I'm totally going to lose my health care. Yay. But we have Kyle Fassel says, my favorite theme song. CJ LaChapelle, who people who didn't see in the chat, I should note he has a chance to meet Bailey coming up. He says, good night, all. Compose yourself, CJ. Don't scare her. Like, you
don't want to end up with a restraining order.
No, model your behavior on other people ahead of you in line. And try not to overwhelm her. I would say dial it down 90% from how you feel about her and cherish that memory. So okay, good. He says, I won't scare Bailey. Good. We are genuinely concerned you will scare Bailey, CJ, because of your appreciation for her. And I am glad that you are aware that you don't want to scare her. But seriously, this applies to everybody. Jason D says, wear deodorant. Brock Benningfield says, play it cool. Yes, CJ, play it cool. Play it cool. It's a great memory. Keep it that way. Deep breaths. And we love. Well, I'm excited to hear about it, though. I'm glad that you get to meet her. All right, Javier, thanks.
Happy 4th of July.
Yep, and everybody celebrate 4th of July by supporting us with a VIP membership. YouTubers, the viewers, the graphic is on the screen. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Full details on all the different ways to sign up and a whole list of details of the benefits that come with it. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll talk to you all next time.